Imagine a world where the boundaries between heaven and earth simply vanished. Tucked away in the first 4 verses of Genesis 6 is a mystery that has haunted theologians and seekers for over 2,000 years. It is a story about sons of God, daughters of men, and a race of beings known as the Nephilim. Most people gloss over these verses, but if you look closer, you find a narrative of divine rebellion and forbidden knowledge. We're talking about an event so disruptive that it forced a global reset of creation. The problem is that the Bible is incredibly cryptic about who these figures actually were. Genesis 6:4 says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown." That is the starting point, but it leaves us with massive gaps. No physical description, no clear origin story in that single verse, and no immediate explanation for how they reappeared after a global flood. This silence has created a rift in our understanding of biblical history. Was this a literal supernatural invasion, or is it a symbolic way of describing human corruption? Today, we're going to bridge that gap. We're going to peel back the layers of the Hebrew language and dive into the ancient records that were once common knowledge but were later hidden away. By the end of this journey, you will not just know who the Nephilim were, you will understand the terrifying reason why the Great Flood was seen as the only way to save the human race. To understand Nephilim, we have to start with the name itself. In Hebrew, Nephilim is generally thought to come from the root word napal, which literally means to fall. This has led to 2 main interpretations that have split scholars for centuries. The first is that they are the fallen ones, beings who fell from a higher state of existence. The second, more aggressive translation is those who fall upon others, implying a race of violent attackers or tyrants who crushed everything in their path.
This violence is the key to their identity. In ancient translations like the Septuagint, the word was translated as gigantes, which is where we get our word giants. But in the ancient world, these weren't just tall people. They were beings of immense strength and aggression, with a semi-divine origin. This lines up perfectly with the mighty men of old mentioned in Genesis. But where did this power come from? The text tells us they were the offspring of the sons of God and human women. In the ancient world, many believed these sons of God were literal angels, specifically a group known as the Watchers. This is not just a fringe theory. It was a view held by early Jewish writers, the Dead Sea Scrolls community, and many of the earliest church fathers. According to ancient tradition, a group of 200 high-ranking angels looked down at the beauty of human women and decided to defect from heaven. They made a pact on the summit of Mount Hermon, swearing an oath to go down, take wives, and produce a lineage of their own. They were not just coming for weddings, they were coming with secrets. The Watchers are described as revealers of forbidden knowledge. While the Bible credits human descendants for things like metallurgy and music, ancient records say these fallen angels accelerated human civilization in a dark direction. An angel named Asael is said to have taught men how to forge swords and armor, enabling the first massive wars. He taught women the art of making up the eyes, using antimony and dyes to enhance beauty, which ancient writers saw as a tool for seducing the holy ones. They taught magic, spells, and even the law of the stars, a divine order that kept the cosmos in balance. The result was the Nephilim, and they were not just men of renown in a positive sense. Ancient records describe them as monsters of uncontrollable appetite. One tradition claims they grew to be 300 cubits tall.
While scholars debate if that number is a translation error or hyperbole, the point remains they were an ecological and social disaster. They began to devour the labor of all men. When the food ran out, they turned on the humans themselves, and when the humans were gone, they began to sin against birds and against animals and against reptiles and against fish. They were even said to have devoured each other's flesh and drank their blood. This was the wickedness God saw in Genesis 6:5, where every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The world had become a chaotic mess of hybrid beings and violent technology. The human genome itself was being corrupted. This provides a powerful insight into why Noah was chosen. Noah was described as blameless in his generations. Noah's bloodline was one of the few left that had not been touched by this angelic incursion. The flood was not just a punishment for being bad, it was a necessary quarantine to stop the total destruction of the human race. But the mystery does not end at the flood. Remember, Genesis 6:4 says they were there in those days and also afterward. If the flood wiped out everyone except Noah's family, how do we see giants appearing again later? When Moses sends 12 spies into the land of Canaan, 10 of them return with a terrifying report. Numbers 13:33 says, "We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and they looked the same to us." This creates a massive interpretive problem. Did the Watchers rebel again? Or did the giant gene somehow survive? Some ancient traditions suggest that a few of these beings, like the giant king Og of Bashan, somehow survived the catastrophe. Others believe the term Nephilim was used more broadly for any tribe of unusually tall, violent warriors, like the Rephaim or the Anakim. Whatever the case, the Bible makes it clear that the battle against these giant lineages continued all the way through the time of King David, who famously faced off against Goliath, a man of immense stature. There is another view, however, that tries to take the supernatural out of the story. This is known as the Sethite interpretation, and it became a dominant view in the Roman Catholic Church after the 4th century. In this version, the sons of God are not angels, but the righteous descendants of Adam's son, Seth. The daughters of men are the ungodly descendants of Cain. The sin was not an angelic invasion, but mixed marriages between believers and unbelievers. While this sounds more logical to a modern mind, it struggles to explain why these marriages would suddenly produce giants, or why the early writers insisted on the supernatural version. When you look at all the evidence, the story of the Nephilim reveals a truth about the nature of evil. It suggests that evil is a total subversion of the order God established. It is about watchers who abandon their stations, a law of the stars that is ignored, and fallen ones who try to rule a world they did not create. The Nephilim represent beings who were so confident in their own strength that they became disdainful of every virtue. The story of the Nephilim serves as a warning that there are boundaries in creation that are not meant to be crossed. It tells us that when we seek forbidden secrets or try to become mighty in our own strength, we end up causing the very destruction we're trying to avoid. But it also tells us that no matter how widespread the corruption becomes, God always has a plan for a remnant. He always has a way to cleanse the earth and start again. If this deep dive into the hidden history of the Nephilim changed the way you see the book of Genesis, we want to hear from you. Which interpretation do you find more compelling? The supernatural invasion of the Watchers or the human drama of the line of Seth? Drop a comment below and let's get the discussion started. If you want to keep exploring the mysteries of the Bible, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We are going to keep digging into the truth, one verse at a time. God bless.